Welcome everybody. This is Rev Games coming at you with a tournament report from last night. Just at a local box tournament. I did get the dub in this one with a little bit of skill and a lot of luck, but that's really, sometimes how Yu-Gi-Oh works. So this is the same exact deck list that I profiled a few videos ago with the Chaos Turbo. There are some strange card choices here, but that is a function of what my local meta is. Um, and I'll kind of jump right into the deck list. I'm not going to spend too much time on the deck list. We'll just go over kind of my matches and leave it at that. But um, really a pretty standard monster lineup. The only, I think, flex spot is whether or not you play one or two Knight Assailants and maybe the ratios of your flips. I don't really think you can play less than 3 Spy. It's just so good. Deco, in my opinion, some people are on 3 of this. Some people stick to 2. This realistically, I mean, if you wanted to get a little fancy, you could probably go to 1. It's a really good card. Again, Tsukiyomi in the main. If there was a flex spot, I guess it could be that. I'm really not sure that is a flex spot. This card did really well last night. There were a lot of Kaikus. There were Monarchs that it shut off. There were Snatch Steal plays. There were I had to order things correctly to uh, flip something and then flip it back up and then do rings for game, which actually won me the box. Um, so this card did really well, but there's also long strings of time where Tsukiyomi just feels like the worst card in your deck, just depending on your matchup and depending on when you draw it in the game. Like there are a lot of times where you're just setting it and then they're gonna attack into it and then it dies and you flip something where it just feels like a totally dead card. But the upside on this is just so high at times with stuff like your flip monsters and faith and shutting off the most threatening stuff to the deck like Kaiku and a lot of the warrior stuff. I didn't play warrior at all last night, but this is a really good card against them, and that's what surprised me. It was mostly turbo-ish stuff, and this still performed pretty well. Pretty standard stuff. This card, again, like another flex spot that people want to cut that really comes in waves. Like sometimes it's just okay, I drew card destruction and I have a bunch of chaos stuff. But the nice thing about discard strategies like this that are heavy on Regeki breaks and run your other discard stuff like the gracefuls um, and of course the card destruction and tribe and stuff is when you do have very high skew, like the statistical term for it, upside cards that are dead a decent amount of the time or useless, you can just discard them. That's very similar with some of my thoughts on Solemn Judgment, which is if you draw it in the early game, it's really not that big of a deal if you discard it. Yeah, you might, view it as a -1, but it's it's a very high upside card, and you're going to be able to end games way, way earlier than if you otherwise weren't running it. This card was absolutely insane last night on both sides. When it was activated on my end, I had a really, really good time with Knight Assailants, Thunder Dragons, Serpents. It was just firing on all cylinders. I was able to toss just fodder hands multiple times, um, despite being up against other turbo players. And then when it was resolved on me, one time in particular, uh, I, it more or less just completely lost me the game in round 1. Um, so it's just a really strong card. Again, high variance, dead a lot of the times, but the upside is just resolving a good card destruction is better than pot, graceful, and do it will ever be. Like a good card destruction. Like you can go so plus off this and it can change the state of the game so much. Now it's not a card you're going to recycle over and over again with faith, but a good card destruction makes these look like child's play. Like when you get one off, and that's kind of what I'm talking about. There are decent card destructions, there are good card destructions, and then there are just absolutely nut game changing. Like this is a morphing jar when I'm on 0 cards, type situations. So it's just such a high upside card. And I hope you guys kind of get what I'm saying with the skew thing, which is how the distribution of outcomes kind of uh, is going to play into the design of your deck and what you can discard and when it's live. Uh, Trap lineup is actually pretty non-standard. I've just been experimenting with this. These are mandatory 2 Solemns, as I've mentioned before. I just think this card deserves a spot in the main deck. I mean, even at 1, I don't think players that are playing none of this know what the fuck is going on. Like, I just don't really understand how you can play a control deck without at least 1 Solemn, if not 2. This, I don't really think you need 3, um, but it's a result of some other deck choices. So you know, subject to change. This performed very well. It's just the flexibility of this card on being able to shut off like when you get a read on a Magician of Faith even, or just being like blind end phase, like destroying a back row and then making a big push or setting up a board behind Solemns. Whatever it might be, it's a really good card. I'm pretty happy with the deck. The trap lineup, namely these 3 cards, I am a little bit iffy on. I'm really just unsure with my local meta whether or not trap dust shoot belongs in the main. Uh, After playing last night, it 100% would have been correct to have several dust shoot in the main, but I had to make the read on my local meta, which is usually a 10 people tournament, and it's usually like more warrior stuff. Like, I guess this is decent. First, we have a reasoning gate guy. We have a few like goat control players. Some monarch stuff and some like more casual players. But like last night, it was mostly turbo stuff, and of course, this is really good. So again, more of just a function of my local meta. This is for the RGT guy that usually plays, which didn't show up last night. These are for warriors, and we usually see a decent amount of warriors, which I didn't play at all last night, so these never came in. They can come in versus RGT. These come in versus RGT and Turbo. These came in basically every. I'm thinking about it. I think every single game last night, because my matchups were round 1 Turbo, that had some like odd tech choices, uh, like Sakuretsu and Kaiku in the main, but it was still running the discard. Well, stuff like Thunder Dragons and like Serpents and Chaos. So this would have come in. These didn't come in at all. These. See, I don't know for my local metagame if this is the right call. I really like this on Dueling Book Ladder just because it covers your ass on so many matchups. There's a lot of goats running around right now. Um, just more like roguish goats, not necessarily like pure goat control. There's a lot of burn you run into. Reasoning Gate, this is good against. It just puts you out of range, and they're usually going to use goats to block an attack. And maybe if they see it, game 3 or later game 2, they'll end phase it, but they're usually not expecting to. So this has been a very high performing card. I think it could go to 1, but it's just kind of crazy how many games I win with this. But in my local meta, I don't think there's a single deck that that I'm bringing this in against now that I think about it. Because we don't have a burn player. We have had goat players in the past, but I didn't see any of them last night. We have a monarch player, which he's more on like a Steinish. I played him last night. It looked like he was on he might have done like a smoke screen strategy, and I'll get into the matchups, but like I didn't see any goats like econ goat stuff. So for the local meta, I'm really not sure this is worth keeping in. But this is kind of what I've been hitting on ladder too. This is pretty self-explanatory for turbo. These are for the warriors, which again I didn't play at all last night. Turbo, well, this would be for burn and stuff too, and warrior, rogue, whatever it might be. So again, it's a little bit of a strange list, but it was tailored to my local meta. And I keep on saying that, but if it were really tailored to my local meta, there probably are like 1 or 2 things I would have changed. Namely, these probably would be flexed in for like a 3rd dust shoot, a 3rd Saku. But I've only played in this local twice for GOAT format at least, just because we do it like every other month, so it's not like I get an every week kind of read on these things. And I just figured I'd toss these in because if it's GOAT format, I just figure people that play GOAT format casually are going to play some sort of GOAT deck, which was not the case. So that's the deck and some of the explanations for weird choices. So we'll get into the matchups. This was just a 3-round tournament, and we basically just play until somebody is undefeated, and then somebody is, uh, 2-1. So whoever's undefeated, wins. Which was basically 3 rounds last night. We had 8 players show. So in terms of the player base, there was me. I saw. I didn't get to see everyone's deck. There were 2 newer players that were playing like some like crazy uh, like summon skull stuff. One guy had like a final deck, and he resolved final on his friend, and everyone was just going crazy. It was a really fun time. Um, and I didn't get to play either of those players. I kind of wanted to just because I wanted to get like a win. But I hope everyone was at least nice to him, so we can get some more people playing in these locals and having a good time. And so round one, I played against a player that was returning to the game. Like probably I don't know how long it's been since he played, but probably like a decade. I think he's a Magic player. I saw him playing Magic when I walked in the store, and I think he was talking with somebody else about like some Magic stuff. And he was on a, a turbo list that was um, a little bit teched out, either by I think it was more by accident. But he had Kaikus and Sakus in the main. Um, in game one, I opened better than him, and he it was just kind of one of those things where I opened better and I had card advantage for a while. But that was the game he resolved a card destruction and tossed away all my chaos, so I wasn't able to extend. And it was too early in the game, based on like his back row, for me to commit any chaos. I didn't want to be the first one to just commit something, and he was kind of walling me with stuff like spies, and then he'd have a Kaiku, and then um, we played this for probably 30 minutes, and this is game one, round one, and um, it was a kind of frustrating game because like I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I think I played like much better than him. But it was kind of one of those games where like right when you need chaos, you don't have it, or like right when you need back row removal, you don't have it, and then like right when you need like monster removal, you don't have it. Like he was resolving face, and it was just a really frustrating thing. Like it was just like when I was uh, hot, he was cold, and vice versa. It was kind of a frustrating game, and he was a newer player, and I had a few back row, and he summoned something with like a walled spy board and a set, and I torrentialed, and he tried to MST from hand to like negate it, like, and that was totally fine. I was like, hey, like that doesn't do anything. He was like, oh, then I'll target the other thing, and um, I don't know if this is right or wrong, but like it was the first time he was playing like goat, so I let him do that, and I don't know if it necessarily lost me the game, but like I let him like change the target since he didn't like know MST could negate or whatever. Um, I mean, it was a learning thing. Like he learned the lesson, but I just don't know. Like if maybe like comment like if you think it's like okay for like especially at a local level. Like I mean, there was a box on the line, but to let that slide, or if it's something just hey like you got to keep the original target, like you're gonna go even more negative. Um, but he hit like an important back row. I can't even remember what it was. It might have been like Solemn or something. Um, and then after that, I mean, I was at a point in the game where I was like probably like 20 cards remaining in my deck, and he was just like just totally walling me with back row, and I was like, okay, like, this is going to be an easy game to win in game one. I'm way up on cards, and I just need to get heavy, blow the back row out, because he was playing into it really heavily because he was not on solemn at that point. I could tell, and it's just game from there. And I was not able to get heavy or really any back row removal to clear that. So he ground me out basically all the way up until I was at like 2 cards left in my deck, 2 or 3, and I had like some chaos stuff in hand, and like we're coming up on like 35 minutes maybe like into it, like round one, game one, and I just like calculated like how I could get through his stuff, and like I think he had a spy up or something. And I was like, I can't win from here. He was up on life points, so I had to scoop, and I looked in the very bottom card of my deck was heavy, and I was like, oh, God damn it. So a very frustrating game, like just kind of like when I needed to like zag, he had the zig. It was just it was frustrating, but I kept it cool. Game two, we drew pretty evenly. Again, I lost game one despite probably drawing better in the early game, and it was a pretty clean sweep. I was playing pretty quickly, and he was playing pretty normal speed. And then we get into um, game three, and I didn't know if game two was going to go into time or not, so I was citing some like I didn't know when it was going to go into time, like upstarts. And I kept in solemn just because I thought we could get pretty far into the game um, with the time remaining we had, which retroactively might have been a mistake in game two. But game three, I sided these out. And I think I kept in duo, which I still think is probably correct. But we had just a few minutes, and I was playing pretty quickly, and I don't think he knew time rules, but um, time was called on his turn, so that was zero, and then one, two, three, and he was up by 600 life points. Uh, I think he swung over something with a kaiku, and um, I wound up getting chaos on the board or something. I'm trying to think. I might have had like double chaos live in the hand if he cleared it, but attacked, and like after the game, apparently he had mirror force and like just didn't activate it. Um, I don't know like what other cards in his hand, but like people were spectating just because we were like by far like the last people playing, like no one else was playing at that point. And based on like what other people said, like even if he would have activated it because that was turn one in time, um, by turn three I would have been able to um, basically clear everything because I had chaos live and then push through whatever his um, set monster was because I think I had like a break or a nobleman. I don't remember, but I don't think he was super clear on the time rules. So ended up winning that. And I don't like saying this type of thing, but I think it was a deserved win. Like it would have felt like really bad to to lose to that because like he wasn't like a bad player. Like he was just out of practice because he hasn't played in a while. Like he does shoot at me turn one once and then like immediately played into like a Tsukiyomi. Like he saw Tsukiyomi and then just like normal summoned Kaiku and I was like, oh, okay. And then he like didn't back it up with anything. Um, but it kind of just goes to show that there's a lot of variance in the game, and you gotta keep a cool head, which I think I did a very good job of like all day. Um, when things don't go your way, like especially game one, like I'd say like if I were to replay that like a million times and just reshuffle the decks one more time, like I'm winning that like a good 95% of the time. It was just kind of one of those things where it's like you just can't hit the broadside of a barn with any of the cards you need at the right time. Because I was just so up on cards. And then round two, and again, good guy, game one. But round two, I opened up really lucky, and I'd say my luck this tournament was actually pretty darn good uh, overall. But I opened up like a Trinity piece. He didn't. We had a back and forth for a good amount of the time, and then it got to the point in the game where I had duoed a Monarch out of his hand, and this was what I thought at the time, just like pure Monarchs, and then he had like beaters in there too, so it was kind of like Monarchs plus like Kaikus, and then I think he had like one other big beater, and he didn't set a single Speller Trap or a single monster game one, and I just ended up kind of beating him down from there, just because with Monarchs, like if they can't tribute some stuff off, or they like, and I didn't even see Soul Exchange, then you're probably just gonna win. Um, so game two of round two, I side out like the spell and trap removal and the nobleman's, and I'm trying to think what else I might have sided out here. I think that might have been it. But I was having trouble like on really what even is good against that kind of deck Monarchs. Um, and I was settling like, is Dust Shoot even good? Like, is he gonna keep a big hand? Like Saku's probably gonna get blown up by Mobius, which I believe I saw game one. Um, I was like contemplating on Token Thanksgiving. I'm like, is he on goats plus enemy controllers? Like, I just really couldn't figure it out. And while I was deep in thought, I actually fucked up my siding. And some of the cards I meant to side in, I didn't. and a lot of the cards I meant to side out, I didn't as well. Um, and I was like taking a little bit of time. It was probably like 3 to 4 minutes in me signing, so I was like, oh, shit, I can't like undo this because I had already shuffled my deck. So I left in Nobleman's and I left in Spell and Trap removal. In game two, lo and behold, I open all of my Spell and Trap removal and a Nobleman, and I'm like, fuck, like we're guaranteed gonna lose this. So we play into, game two, and then he starts setting monsters. And I'm like, what the fuck? And then he also starts setting back row, and they're like traps. So this is what made me think it was some sort of like smokescreen strategy, or it was just kind of one of those one-off odd things where game one he drew all of like a specific type of card, and he had those cards in his deck originally, and he just, we didn't see them. Uh, so that actually wound up in our favor, and it was a back and forth for a few turns. I was able to get some problematic stuff out of the way with Nobleman's. Um, one or two back row was able to be cleared, so they weren't totally dead in my hand, but I didn't really actually have that great of a hand. It was kind of just like a clunky hand, and I was playing from behind. And um, game one, he also brought out a Stein, and that was very scary. I'm trying to think what he brought out with Stein game one. Um, this is bad. What did he bring out? I think it got torrential or something like that. I really can't remember what he brought out, but um, game two, he I saw things like Cold Wave and stuff like that, so it had to be some sort of variation of Cold Wave Monarch. Um, in game two, he Steins and brings out a Ryu Senshi and is definitely in a commanding position. I'm playing from behind, but I did have Snatch Steal, and I had stuff to clear out his back row. I think it was a Regeki break, or it might have just been a blind space or something. I can't remember, but I just snatch his Stein, bring out Master of Oz, and I have a follow up with a Chaos Monster and just basically win right on the spot there. So that was game two, or round two, rather. Round three um, was the finals, more or less. We don't do like a top eight just because it is a small tournament, and this was basically turbo, but it was optimized around recurring the trap lineup. So it was Masker versus Strix and like a bunch of solemns and stuff. And I think there were jars in there. And game one, turn one, he duos me because he won the die roll, and he hits Knight Assailant. And I had another Knight Assailant in my hand, so I pitch it and just get them both back. And this was a nice enough guy, but like he was like definitely on the end of like complaining about like the randomness of this game like a little too much. And like I think he got like very tilted by that, and that was like the very first uh, play of the game. And I followed it up a few turns later with like a graceful pitch. Both of these get him back. Um, and I don't know if he was misplaying or not. Like he seemed like a very technically competent player, but there definitely is something to be said about like your mental state when you do get bullshitted, like especially in the finals. So that was a total blowout game. Like to his credit, like I don't think even like a world championship player could ever come back from like what transpired. I was like resolving faiths, and it was crazy. So game two, I side the appropriate stuff, the mind cons, the trap dust shoots, and the kaikus, and it was a really good back and forth. I drew like shit. He drew two Trinity pieces, and again, he was kind of talking about like how lucky game one was, like bumping people's shoulders, be like, oh, did you see like what he did and like that kind of thing, which is fine. Like it's part of the game and playing in real life, but um, it was still like a very very close game two, despite him drawing very well. And I didn't make any comments on like, oh, like you like had graceful and pot and I didn't have shit, because my hand was basically faith. Um, I think I had two faith for several turns with no spells and traps, and then like the spells and traps I was drawing, like I drew heavy, and like getting that back like was not good at like the point in the game where I was, and he was on jars. Like, I guess I'll get back heavy, and then he'd like set a back row, and it would either be like a jar or something. Because like if they know you have heavy, they're not gonna like set 3 or set 2 or whatever. So, um, but we still like had some back and forth, made some good plays. He made some good plays. And then we go into round 3, and this was, I think, a really good game on both of our parts. Like, I don't think one of us drew better or worse than the other. Um, and I was able to, resolve some faiths to get back, gracefuls and stuff. But um, it was we were really playing from behind just because he was able to kind of get some of the stuff that he wanted to get going. So he was behind a bunch of solemns and traps, which is what that deck is designed to do. And we were just able to slowly whittle down those solemns on his end and not let him resolve Mask of Darkness. And he was on, I think, like 900 life points, and I was on 1750 or something. Um, and I had, I'm trying to think what it was set. It was probably like a serpent. Like I had to protect with serpent for a while, and I set it, and we had Tsukiyomi in hand, and I flipped the serpent, summoned Tsukiyomi to set it, and then just ranked for game. Because I think one thing, I think one thing we did is we were able to duo him, and then we got a duo back with Faith, and we're able to duo for 1, um, which it just happened to be at a part like a point in the game where he happened to commit like back from our, of course, wanted to hit 2, but we were like um, in a decent position, but we weren't like when both players are that low and we have just a handful of cards. Like we were both probably on 2 to 3 cards. Um, it could go either way. And there were like a few misplays. I blind spaced because I wanted to make a push, and it was a jar, and he just changed it. I was like, fuck, like I just shouldn't have done that. Then he had another jar the following turn. I was like, I could have saved that to end phase space it. So it was just there were definitely misplays on my end, but he was definitely a little like upset. I could tell. I mean, he was still courteous to me and like, oh, good game, and like we bump fist and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. Like just like commenting a little bit too much on like other players' luck and stuff. Like I just like it's Yu-Gi-Oh. Um, this is a very high variance game. Like we have Trinity in this format. Um, like I got sacked several times like by just like random like card destructions into like just the perfect answers with like heavy when I was forced to commit back row, where like there were times when I got duoed turn 1, and like I don't like just get salty about it. So that was um it was fine. Like he really wasn't that bad. I'm not trying to oversell it, but I just like I don't really ever make comments on like other players' luck, and I don't even really make comments on my own luck because that does give your opponent information about your hand. If like certain players turn 1, like if they open like a brick hand, they'd be like, oh, I don't see how I'm winning this. Like, don't say that. Like that just gives your opponent a read. I mean, unless you're like bluffing that, like you have a god hand, like that just gives your opponent a read that like maybe they can push harder and end the game earlier and to not play defensively. Like you just really shouldn't be commenting on luck, in my opinion, in this game, whether or not it's your own or other players' luck, because that is giving you or your opponent information, and you're also probably not playing the mental game where you do have to stay pretty cool, calm, and collected. And I think I did a pretty good job of that last night. Like I don't think I raged um, at all. I mean, I wasn't happy about like certain things like turn 1 or round 1, game 1. Like I think if there were ever an opportunity for me to get upset, it was that. Just because like having to lose like when you're way up on cards, like not drawing any of your outs, and then like having to kind of like allow your opponent to bend the rules on like a MST negate thing, like could definitely be tilting. But I didn't do that, luckily. So um, that is kind of what happened. I won the box. I just elected for it to go to store credit, just so I can enter in the future for free for Edison and Goat, which I play there. Because I don't really need like any cards. Like if I need cards, I'm just gonna buy them like off TCG Player or something. Um, on a side note, like I don't really know if I'm gonna be playing Turbo anymore. I played Turbo at my first, like I just got into Goat like a few months ago again, like in paper, played DB a little bit, but this is kind of just what I had at the time. Like the first time I entered, I didn't have a lot of stuff. Like I didn't have duos. There was like stuff missing in the monster lineup. Like my side was just a total mess. But I purchased some. Like I sold like a bunch of my old stuff, like current stuff. When I say current, I mean like like post Edison stuff, and like bought like filled in the gaps here. And I don't know. Like this deck is definitely probably it's definitely the best deck in the format. Like Warrior counters it, but um, it just it feels like sometimes you don't really earn the advantage. Like this is just such a potent deck, and I don't just play to win. I want to play this to get better and have fun and have something to do, every month or so. So I might, play something like Goat Control or Warrior. I might try Burn. Like I kind of just do want to mix up the games here because Turbo is a little bit linear, and there definitely is a kind of a sat component to it, which is that if you're resolving faiths over and over, it's a very very difficult to lose those games. So that is the tournament report. If you have any suggestions for the deck, leave them down in the comments. Feel free to drop a like, subscribe, whatever that might be. But I am signing off.